There we go. I see our participants have started joining. Welcome to today's session. For those of you who is logging in currently, we're just going to give it a few seconds for everyone to be able to join us. So while we're waiting, why don't you use the chat function at the bottom of your screen and just let us know who you are, where you're from, and if it's your first, second, third, millionth webinar with Golden Key. We'd just like to know how many of our members have joined for all of our sessions. So I'll be waiting for you guys in the chat function at the bottom of your screen. Hi, Yari from Indonesia, your second session, welcome. Natasha from PE, most of our webinars. Cecilia from Melbourne, first webinar, welcome. Shweta from Durban, we have Deb from Brisbane, Australia, third session. We have Kumisu from Gaborone. You guys, once again, have a very international group logging on today. Lo from Cape Town. Apologies if I do miss your name. There's so many people responding and sending in their name. You have someone from Ohio in the United States, but they live in Dublin, Ireland. So welcome, guys. Montreal, Canada. Welcome to our session. So hello and welcome to all our newly launched Golden Key Academy, a place of online learning developed by Golden Key especially for you, our members. It's been created in response to feedback from our members telling us that they want more career support and expert guidance. We listened and created a website filled with video articles and ebooks. If you haven't had a chance to check it out, please do. One of the best things we're offering as part of Golden Key Academy is a packed schedule of live webinars like this one. We're doing our best to select speakers and topics that are relevant to you. So please feel free to give us feedback at any time that if you want to learn anything specific by mailing us at thoughtleaders@goldenkey.org. Today we're focusing on stress management with these amazing speakers. Leading the reins today is Dr. Bill Price, Certified Master Life Coach, CEO at VIP Coaching International Institute, mentor and NLP specialist. Welcome, Dr. Bill.
Thank you very much.
Then at the back with him, we have Marnie Both, the CEO at Evolve Life, Certified Life Coach, and studied theology at the University of the Free State. Welcome again, Marnie. Then we have Neo Moselani, Certified Life Coach, CEO at New Motivation Academy, a youth pastor at Holy Harvest Church, entrepreneur, Golden Key International Honor Society member, and award-winning leader and author. Welcome, guys. It's such an honor to host you guys for these sessions. For those of you who have logged in for one of these sessions for the first time, they are available on our YouTube page as well, the previous sessions, if you've missed anything. And you're welcome to use the Q&A to questions. In our next session on Thursday, we'll have these three amazing people answering all of the questions that you guys had over the series. So without further ado, Dr. Bill, I'll hand over to you.
Gillian, thank you. My deepest thanks and appreciation to the Golden team for making this moment possible. I also like to thank my mother for making this moment possible. And I am thrilled for every one of you out there. I wish I could see you personally and I wish I could look into your eyes. But we're in the world of Zoom. And so I'm looking into a lens and I'm hoping that I'm looking into your eyes, which is the window of your soul. We're talking about the subject of stress. It's a well-known subject, but very little about stress is known about what happens in the brain. I'm a qualified neuroscientist, so I have the privilege of looking at the brain and understanding that everything in life that happens within the brain. And so I'm going to give you a little bit of a brainy perspective today, with a lot of practical hints of how you can hack your brain and help you to realize that you're in charge and that you can be the person who orchestrates your mind, and with self-control and with a sense of confidence and with a sense of clarity, rather than trying to use what most motivational speakers tend to teach us, willpower. Willpower is one of the worst things that you can pay attention to and even try. The brain automatically gives it a hard time for it to be able to flourish and for it to be able to manifest in our lives. So this morning I woke up and I saw an SMS from a friend of mine, and I read the following: "Good morning, let stress begin." And I had to smile because I'm going, he doesn't know that I'm going to be talking to 100 plus minus people. I nearly said odd people, but that wouldn't have been polite, on the subject of stress. But do you know that when you look at the calendar, after Tuesday, so even after Tuesday, our calendar says the following. So it stands for Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. But when we live in a world, we have to live within the reality of understanding how I'm going to manage my life and how I'm going to orchestrate my life, because you're the boss of your life. You're the orchestrator of your life. So to understand stress, we need to understand a few things. So you can see that I got an A for artistic design at the University of Blind People. And this is actually the drawing of a human body. And you'll see that over here is the outline of the body, so the dark outline of the body, and we've got a perimeter. So I can walk up to you and I can touch you, I can touch your shoulder. So your body has got a perimeter. The purpose of our body is twofold. It is the purpose of communication. So our body is not just to be manifest who you are on the planet. Your body is there to communicate with the world and with the environment, and to communicate with you on the inside and on the outside of you. So we've got to become aware. So the first lesson I want to suggest we pay attention to when we discover stress, this is where we're going to pick it up. We're going to pick it up in our body. That's where we'll pick it up first and foremost. And we'll pick it up with vibes and energy. So when we were created, this body was created, and we were created with energy, and there is electrical energy, there's magnetic energy, there is neurochemical energy. So we've got different forms of energy, and you and I pick that energy up before we feel an emotion. So whenever you have an emotion, it's almost like you're watching an airplane flying overhead. You look up, and we tend to look at where the sound is, and then we move forward and we're going, oh, there's the airplane over there. So that's what the brain does. It first creates energy. So in neuroscience, we don't call our emotions emotions, we call them feelings. But in neuroscience, we call energy in motion. So there's energy that happens, and you'll pick it up in the 8 main energy centers of the body: the crown of the head, the forehead, the thyroid area, the heart, the solar plexus, the stomach, the lower abdomen, into the inner thighs, behind the knees, on the shoulders, behind your shoulder blades, and your head, in your mouth. So if I had to ask you, the last time you experienced stress, could you remember where you felt it? Not mainly firstly, but mainly afterwards. Where did you feel the stress? So some can say, I felt it behind my shoulder blades, I felt it on my shoulders, I felt it in my head, I felt it in my mouth, felt it in my temples, behind my eyes. That means that you are aware. And that's where stress begins to leave its signals and its DNA of signals within our body. So we were created as energy. Then we were also created as matter. And matter is solid, liquid, and gas. Watch out for the gas. And then we were created in space, in time. And so here we are. We were created. Then within the way if you don't believe in creation, then it happened with the Big Bang. And so we got a brain. So our brain has got a left and a right brain hemisphere. But the fallacy is that a person is right-brained or left-brained. Neuroscience has totally disproven that fact. It's no fact. So even the people who got a Nobel Prize for left and right brain hemisphere studies handed their Nobel Prize back because it just doesn't work. It's a myth, just as much as your reptilian brain, which is your base brain, is a myth as well. So it's not called, we did not come from reptiles. But if you look at evolution, we didn't evolve from animals. Now, if you look at your brain, in your brain, we have 13 intelligences. We have 8 brain languages. We have 7 logical levels. We've got 28 filters through which the brain filters before we even start. 21 sortings, 8 thinking levels. So through our 8 brain languages, which is see, feel, hear, smell, taste, movement, and kinesthetic, the brain picks up signals. It sees things, hears things, feels things, and then immediately turns it into energy. So you don't have in your brain little pictures. You don't have memories with picture frames on them. You only have forms of energy. So the brain turns everything into energy, turns a sound into energy, turns pictures into energy, turns feelings into energy, and it stores it in our conscious and our subconscious and our unconscious minds in the form of energy. But when it's recalled and it brings it together, then we will then see it on the inside in terms of a visual collection or an auditory collection or a feeling or a kinesthetic connection. So here we have our body. Our body also has 11 systems, and those systems are, so the skin is one system, my circulation system is another system, my nervous system, my ability to fight disease is another system, my lungs is another system. So there's 11 systems within the body, and it's my job to look after all of that. It's our job to pay attention to look after our body. Then just below the body or inside the body, and the reason why I've drawn it with dotted lines is because we are holistically made, so we're not compartmentalized. We have in between the body and the middle part of us is our ego or our personality. And our ego and our personality is what is formed in our life by culture, by family, by religion, etc., etc. So we are created and we are born into a world and we create an ego. Very interestingly enough, in the defense of our egos, there are 6 curtains that, and this is where all the stress is going to come from. This is the game of stress. So we've got our false self as one curtain. We've got our hidden self. Our hidden self is the self that we're ashamed of. We don't want to tell anybody about that. Then we've got our projected self, the self that I project people. You can like me. Then I have my true self, which is the part that we all long to be, but very difficult to discover. Then we've got our denied self, the self that we've denied, going, I won't allow myself to do that. I'll never allow that to happen in my life again, etc. So we deny ourselves. So we've got 6 selves within our ego. And then in the center of our being is what I call our essence. and my essence entity. And in terms of our self-identity, we are a diamond. So you're not just one person. If you say, Dr. Bill, I'd like you, then I'm going to say, so which one of me do you want to get to know? Do you want to get to know the Dr. Bill who's talking to you now, who's in the doctor neuroscience zone? Do you want to meet the Dr. Bill when him and his wife have had an argument where I'm lying under the bed and she's saying you can come out, and I'm going, no, thank you, I'm comfortable where I am? There's difference of Dr. Bill. So there's different kinds of you. So you are a museum of self-identities. So the game of stress is within this entire reality. Our ego plays a role, our personality plays a role, our thoughts play a role, our logical levels play a role, our levels of consciousness play a role, and we need to create our own reality by using all of these together. And when we create our reality, we are creating that reality to be able to handle this thing called stress within our lives. So here's the picture of a brain. And so you'll see over here is the frontal lobe, and that's the executive part of our brain, the logical part. Then we have the parietal lobe, which is the top back part, which creates touch, movement, and sensation. We have the occipital lobe, which is the back of our brain, and that is where vision is. Then in the we've got the temporal lobe, and that's where language and audio resides. The bottom back end of the brain is the cerebellum, and that's with coordination, movement, and balance. And then we have the stem brain, and which is sometimes called falsely so the reptilian brain. There's a whole lot of nonsense about that, but that's where all the motor and the body basics are. And then in the center over here, we have the limbic system, and in the limbic system, you've got your hippocampus, which are two little, they're about the size of your little finger, and they're called the seahorses of the brain, and that's where memory resides, and you've got 7 levels of memory. But the hippocampus also plays a very, very powerful part, and I want you to remember these two, the hippocampus and the amygdala. Now, the amygdala is the size of your thumbnail, and there's 2 of them, one in each hemisphere. And this is called the limbic system. So this is where our emotions, but the amygdala, those 2 little buggers over there, they are where stress happens and where stress ignites a whole lot of stuff within us. So here's an interesting thing that you need to remember about your brain. The first thing is, your brain does not like change. It really does not like change. And it creates 3 arguments, if I could put it that way, 3 particular arguments to be able to try and get you to not believe in change or not want to change, either for the or for the bad. So the first thing that the brain does in terms of counteracting change is that it tries to make the change or your reality invisible. So it tends to just help you look at stuff and go, you tend to look through things. You tend to, so if I were to ask you what are your stressors, you would take some time to try and define that for you, because the brain, its first job is to make that kind of stuff invisible, because the brain has one role, and that is to survive. It wants you to survive. So this is a counter mechanism for you to survive. So the first thing it'll do, it'll make your problem seem invisible. And then you'll feel it emotional. Then it'll build up emotionally. The second thing that your brain will do is that it will then begin to create a dialogue and to say, it's not that bad. It's not going to be that bad. It's not going to happen. It can't happen to you. Should have never happened to you. See, this kind of stuff does happen, and you need to ignore it. So it creates a narrative for you not to believe it. The third thing that it tends to do, it tends to switch off energy towards that particular problem. So it's like if you break an arm and they put plaster of Paris around your arm, and 6 to 7 weeks afterwards, when you remove the plaster of Paris and you compare your two arms, this one is thinner than this one. And the reason for that is, while it was dormant, the brain picked up, I don't need, so there's not much energy happening here now because it's been captured within a cast. And so therefore there's no freedom of movement. There's not a lot of, so the brain goes, okay, I'm going to switch down that, and I'm not going to send so much energy that way. And it's called entropy. So with volume, and your arteries have become less with volume, etc., because the brain has done a cutoff of energy. And that's what the brain thirdly does when it's faced with change. It wants you to step aside and not be involved with that stress. So if you could ignore it, that's why we're so excellent with deleting, denial, and generalization. And that happens in the previous stage that you saw, where the stuff has to go through all those levels. So actually, the brain picks up every second round about 2 million bytes of information. So those of you who know digital, those are little blocks, and there's 2 million of them every 2 seconds that the brain picks up, absorbs, and puts into the body. But it goes through those filters that I spoke about previously. And at the end of going, we only land up with about 130,000 bytes that we actually cognitively remember. The rest has gone into the subconscious, the unconscious, and the conscious mind. So when we look at this brain, it works. The part that is interesting is stress. The game of stress is played in the center part of our brain with the amygdala and the hippocampus. So the amygdala, the moment I sense loss, fear, anxiety, you remember we had 3 kinds of energy, and the one energy was neural chemical energy. Loss, fear, anxiety, anywhere in my life, the amygdala emits hormones. And there are 3 of them. There's noradrenaline, there is adrenaline, high toxic adrenaline, and then there is cortisol. And cortisol, if I take those 3 substances and I put them into a syringe and I inject you half a cc every week for a period of 3 months, you will have a lump somewhere in your body doing its work. So the moment my brain picks and I feel loss, anxiety, then it pumps those very, very bad chemicals into my body, and I then have the sensation, and then this creates the depletion of energy, and the energy is a chemical induced energy. So that's why you feel drained when you're also stressed. The hippocampus plays a very wonderful part in our body in that it emits wonderful, wonderful chemicals like serotonin and dopamine, and those beautiful chemicals that are pumped into our body when we have closeness, hugs, serotonin, dopamine, endorphin, all of those are the beautiful chemicals, some of which we experience when we experience orgasms. So some of you will know about that. Others are going, what? But hippocampus is responsible for the positive energy, and the amygdala is what we in neuroscience call the chaotic energies. So in neuroscience, call emotions positive and negative. We call them feelings, positive and chaotic. So I need to work on making my day a hippocampus day. And by making my day a hippocampus day, the hippocampus switches on the moment it experiences movement, the moment that I'm focused on a goal, the moment it fixes on I am moving in a direction toward my goal, towards a goal, and the moment there's achievement and a goal and movement towards that goal, then my immediately switches on, pumps the amazing positive chemicals and hormones into my body. So the game of stress is between these two. Interestingly enough, it takes 6 times longer for the amygdala hormones to wear off than it does the hippocampus hormones that are positive. So the negativity of the brain, the proneness somehow built into it, and it takes 6 times longer for that stress and for that loss to disappear if I don't work with it logically. The only way I can work with it is with it logically. So let's have a look at that. So here we have the brain. In the center of the brain, these two we know are our hippocampus, and these two we know are our amygdala. And but here depends on the consciousness. So here we've got our unconscious mind, here we've got our subconscious mind, here we've got our conscious mind. But then we've been given an amazing capacity in the executive part of our brain, which is called our creative conscious mind. Now, these three have an agenda, and the agenda is the memory. So if I have a traumatic memory, or I have a smiley face memory, that is what the agenda will be, coming up from the unconscious right into the conscious. And the agenda over here is always the past. So it's interesting to notice when you look at your emotions, you can tell an emotion about the tense in which it is. So you'll never feel guilty about the future. You'll always feel guilty about something that's happened in the past. You'll never feel anxious about the past. You'll always feel anxious about something that's about to happen, that is actually happening. So the emotions, if we can name them, we can immediately discover the tense in which they present themselves into our. Remember, awareness is the key role of that I need to play in terms of working and understanding my stress. So the moment I pick up a trauma or a negativity or a stress that comes popping in here, and it pops up here from it pops into my conscious, and now the debate starts. In my conscious mind, I can do nothing with it. I've got to literally take a deep, here's an exercise. You take a deep breath. The moment you sense stress, anxiety, whatever, take a deep breath, take it with me now, and out. Breathe again, and out. The moment you've taken that breath and you take a step to the left, literal step to the left, or move your body to the left or your head to the left, you then consciously shift into this creative conscious mind space. And this mind space here has only got one agenda: the future, and that is to be creative. It's to create the new. You cannot create the new here, here, or here. You can only create your new here, creative conscious mind. So here is where the work has to be done. And the work that has to be done is, you'll see that I have a lap of the creative conscious and the conscious mind. So in the frontal lobe, the executive frontal lobe, that I connect to here, and I bring that into the creative consciousness of thinking, and it's a way of thinking and a style of thinking. So, and the way you do that is you breathe in, You invite whatever it is, a bad thing that happened, a death of a friend, I don't know, whatever calamity, COVID-19, whatever it is that you're facing right now, you look at it, you invite it into this space. In here, you strengthen yourself by putting a bubble around you. And you breathe in and you go, the bubble that I'm in is me. I'm living in the I am time, the now. What's happened has possibly happened in the past or has happened a few minutes ago, but it's not happening. What I'm looking at, I'm thinking is happening now. So it's not actually happening now, thinking and allowing it to happen. So it gives precedence to what happens in my life. Your thinking can create chemicals. So you can literally, by thinking powerful thoughts, you create an energy, you create a neurochemical, it's called epigenetics, and you can literally, with your thinking, create new genes. And just through meditation, I fell off a roof. I didn't fall because I was meditating, but I fell off a roof, and I broke L4 and L5 in my spine, and I decided I'm not going to go for an operation. And for a period of 2 years, I simply did meditation, I did biokinetics, I did stretching, I did yoga, a little bit of prayer here and there, and I've got it on the x-rays to prove that meditation does heal. Stuff that the doctor said when he looked at the x-ray, when the neurosurgeon said this, it'll never grow, that won't work, this won't happen, that won't happen. I had the privilege of taking the x-rays back to him, and he said the F word, which is Frikkie or Freddy. And he said he can't believe it. And then he asked me what I did, and I told him. And he said, well, that's just interesting. And I said, I told you I don't want an operation. I want to do it without an operation. Thank you very much. So how does one, so meditation and mindfulness are tools, which we'll talk to you about in the question and answer session. And they are definite tools that you need to provide for yourself and learn to be able to handle this subject called stress. Because stress, when the amygdala switches on and that cortisol goes into your system, into the nervous system, it goes into the circulation system, it goes into every part of your body, goes into your skin, and that's where stress then collates itself and stores itself in those areas that I mentioned earlier in the presentation, in the cluster areas that I mentioned. So stress goes and stays somewhere, it doesn't go away. Stress doesn't go away if I just think it away. I've got to work it through, and I've got to understand that there's a balance to the approach of how I've got to handle stress. So I've got to exercise, I've got to sleep, I've got to eat well, I've got to drink lots of water, I've got to drink nutrients, I've got to have fun, I've got to have recreation. All of that is part and parcel of living a balanced, well-being life. I've got to meditate and bring all of that as discipline to my life, while I'm understanding that stress is something that is natural, but if I allow it, it's going to overtake me, and it'll definitely harm me and do bad stuff to me. So you've got to understand that stress on the one hand can be your friend to help you run away from a cobra and black mamba and a motor car that's approaching, but stress, when it resides and it presides within you, that's when it begins to bubble and boil, and a broth begins to form, and it begins to hinder and to really hurt you. So, Dr. Bill, what do I do? There's my current situation, and then I have to reframe myself. So what do I do in this creative conscious space? So the first thing in the creative conscious space is to become aware of 4 things. And I hope to help you with this. So I'm stressed out about the fact I've lost 50%, or I'm stressed I can't catch up with work. I'm stressed about the fact that I'm just don't understand things fully, and the school kind of carries on, the university carries on disregarding me. And I wish I could start an organization that you know, says that people are important and ADD people matter and all that kind of stuff. The art is, folks, everybody stresses, deal with it. Stop trying to turn yourself into another project and go, let's create a project that other people. My granddaughter and my grandson is ADD, dyslexic, and they're in university and they're just learning how to deal with it. And they refuse to put them coping mechanism. So how do I create a coping mechanism? By doing situation is to ask. So motivational speakers will say, just change your thinking, man, just change your thinking. At that point, I, as a neuroscientist, not aggressive, but at that moment, it feels like I want to take a broomstick, push it through their ears, climb on their back and ride them like a Harley main highway and leave them standing in the middle of the highway to deal with that stress and say, think differently now. You don't just change anything by a thought. Life doesn't just change. You must think positive and you must just change it with a thought. There's more than a thought. When you looked at how the brain is made up, there's levels of belief, there's levels of thinking, there's levels of logic, there's levels of consciousness, there's levels of feeling. And you have to work with all those because they all create one thing, which is called a thought. So you can't just change a thought. And it's stupid to tell people, just change your thinking. Everything is going to come right. Your mother-in-law will suddenly be lovable if you just change your thinking or change your attitude. I'm going, it's only part of the story. It's not even the pie. It's not even the crust of the pie. So the first thing that I've got to discover in my conscious creative space as I breathe in and go, this is interesting. The first thing I'm going, this is interesting. I'm wondering what's the belief that drives this thought? Because a thought is not by itself. There's a belief that drives it. So what's the belief? So, oh my goodness, COVID has interrupted business. And so what do I believe about that? So I'm going, well, I believe that COVID is real. I've got to believe it is. And I believe that COVID impacts business. But what's my belief about business? I believe my business can, or do I believe my business is going to die? Because I need to find out what is the belief that is present right now. Once I've discovered that, I then ask the question, what does that belief do in terms of influencing my behavior? So what I tend to do I fold my arms? Do I procrastinate? Do I give up? Do I carry on thinking negatively? Do I become gloomy? Do I become depressive? What's my behavior? So my belief creates a behavior. And find that out, going, so what behavior is it? And I'm going, well, I'm folding my arms. I'm not as excited about selling as I am anymore. I'm not excited about studying as I used to be anymore. And so, okay, now that I understand that, that's important. So, and remember, I take a deep breath after everyone and go, that's interesting. And then the behavior, what result does that create? So the result that the behavior creates is procrastination, or doom and gloom, or negativity, or I just want to go and sleep, or I want to go and drink, or I want to go and throw a pity party, or I want to. So what's the result of that? And then the other question I ask in terms of, that's interesting, if I allow this result to continue, where will I? So if I just let go, if I, and my CD is coming out next week. So if that happens, where am I headed? Then the results, and here's an interesting one. It's one of the most interesting areas of self-discovery, and that is, what payoff do I get by doing this? What payoff do I do by believing and reveling in the current situation. What's my payoff? So my payoff could be self-pity. My payoff could be I'm looking for attention. My payoff could be I'm going back into my childhood where I'm feeling withdrawn, and I'm back in my room and I'm holding my teddy bear that my father took and flushed down the toilet, and I couldn't wear woolen underwear after that for years. So what's the payoff that I get? And it's an interesting part. Then I've got to take another breath. So I take a breath at point 4 and I go, what is my desired result? What do I want in place of, instead of? Remember, I'm standing in the creative consciousness, the place of the future, the creation of the new. What results do I want that I don't want to have anymore? I used to do counseling. That's when I used to like people and enjoy them. And the couple will come in and they'll say they've got problems. And my first question is, how long have you had it? We had it for 5 years. My second question is, how long do you want it for in the future? Do you want another 5 years, another 6 years? Oh, no, we want. So that's okay. So you don't want it longer. Yes, we don't want it longer. So tell me, what does your relationship look like after you've had 6 sessions with me? What's different? What's shifted? What's changed? And you need to pay attention to because the future is where you have the emotion of gratitude, and that's where the hippocampus switches on. So the hippocampus switches on when you are future focused. Then the hippocampus switches on. Then what's the timeline that I want that result? Tomorrow? Do I want it now? Moses comes to Pharaoh that are happy of the French Egyptians. And so Pharaoh says, tell your God, these frogs must go. And Moses says to him very interestingly, the frogs will go when you say so. And this amazing intelligent man, he's the most intelligent man on the planet. He's known as a god, and he's the god of Ra, the sun god. And he's looked upon as a god, treated like a god. And he answers this intelligent question. And he says, okay, tomorrow. Can you believe it? Intelligent man on the planet. He can say now, but he says tomorrow. What he's really saying is, I want to live with the frogs another night, please. When do you want to stop smoking? No, Monday. When do you want to start your diet? For diets. So your timeline is dependent on, then this next thing you must think of in creativity is, what is the new behavior that I want here that must replace that one? A new behavior is a positive behavior. It's a behavior that says, I'm free of stress. I acknowledge it, but I'm moving on. I'm not allowing it to be the anchor that hooks into my skin that I'm going to drag around with me for the rest of my life. And then the final thing in reframing my thinking is, what is the new belief that I now believe based on that? So what do I now believe? So I believe, wow, I believe I can. I believe I'm a conqueror. I believe I've overcome. I believe it is possible. And I believe that there is nothing that help of the creative consciousness connecting to my executive brain. So we definitely need a system. We need support. We need consistent, sustainable habits. We need to be able to pay attention to our lives in awareness. And when we do those things, we understand stress. But the big thing about stress, I don't want to feed the fear and the anxiety, the loss. I do not want to feed that, because then it just pumps all that negative stuff into my body and it stresses me out, and it takes months for that stuff to work out. So I do hope that I helped in some way for you to have a look and understand a little bit about how you manage your brain. And the way that you manage your brain is to manage your brain by understanding that I am in this creative consciousness mind where it's the future, creative and new, where I switch on the hippocampus and I get serotonin and I get dopamine and I get endorphin. I feel all these good, wonderful chemicals in my body that add value to my life. I do not want to give the amygdala a chance. In actual fact, my actions must shrink my amygdala as much as possible. So I hope that's helped you. We're ready to answer some questions for those who ask them.
What an amazing, able to check the chats while you were presenting, but the members were so into the comments saying that
as much as just something that I want to underline, that I don't want you guys to miss what Dr. Bill also said. I remember in the training that we had with, we also trained a few life coaches. And there was once, and Dr. Bill, I think that's something that you can also just elaborate a little bit on later. But there was once a lady that sat there, and she was a physiotherapist. And she just made observation that when she dry needle into her back where she had problems, the patient uncontrollably started to cry. And with further investigation, she found out that that specific patient was in a car accident about 10 to 15 years prior to that, where she lost her baby. And the body literally stored everything also in that trigger point in the body, because the body and mind is systemic processes. Interesting thing is that there was a lady in one of the courses, she said that she had no problems at all, and she went through a process where she released the emotion that she held as a grudge towards her mother-in-law from about 20 years back. She said, no, I've forgiven her, everything is fine. But she did not really work through that in the brain sector. She released that through a process that we also can teach you guys in later stages. But what happened there is the next morning she came back to the course, to the class, and she said, you won't believe me, for the first time in 20 years, I don't have back problems. So you see, you guys, this isn't just happening in the brain. The body and the mind are systemic processes. And it is so important, and I want to underline what Dr. Bill is saying. Please do not just hear these things. It is practical stuff. This is for your health as a whole being, body, spirit, and mind. So yes, Dr. Bill, I just wanted to elaborate and underline what you just said. It is so powerful.
Yeah, thanks you, Mark. It is critical what Marnie is sharing. So when I told you that the brain takes energy, so it turns everything that it sees, feels, and hears, experiences, and then it turns it into energy and stores it into the subconscious, the conscious, and the unconscious. When it goes into those three circles, it also means that it stores it somewhere in a muscle, in a tissue, etc. People that have had kidney transplants from another person suddenly wake up one morning and where they hated spaghetti, now suddenly feel, oh my goodness, today I'd love to have spaghetti 3 times today. Where did that come from? The person that died loved spaghetti. And in the muscle memory, that was stored and it was taken on by the recipient. So we are far more connected to our world and to the universe than we want to consider. And so the way that we're dealing with it is that stress does create procrastination, because the belief of stress is, no, I don't want to be able to do it. It creates the behavior called procrastination. And the result is I tend to put things off. The question of how I overcome that is to ask, what's my payoff by procrastinating? What? And then project it. What if I procrastinate for the next 6 months? What if I just don't do it for the next? then go, oh, no, no, there'll be some consequences. You bet there'll be some consequences. And then go, okay, so I don't want those consequences. Then you start on this side of reframing your life.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bull. There's one question that one of our members had that's part of the reframing. They said, thank you for this wonderful talk. Can you please explain the payoff part of the reframing again, please?
So we hardly ever do anything in our lives without a payoff. I drink water, and the payoff is that I no longer want to feel thirsty. It's not necessarily I'm drinking water so that I will be healthy, but my payoff is I'm trying to stop this yearning on the inside of me of being thirsty. I could then also decide that drinking water will also take the thirst to be very happy. So the payoff is on what I'm going to drink. And the payoff is, what is it that I want to have at the end for my benefit? So the payoff is about my benefit. What's the beneficiation for me by that particular behavior? I hate my mother-in-law. I hate my mother. I'll never forgive my mother. My question is, what's your payoff for that? And the payoff for hating your mother is that you'll have a sense of control, possibly. Control. So I'll show her. I'll hate her for the rest of my life because I'm the boss of me. So that's your payoff. It could be. I'm only using it as an. So a payoff is a beneficiation to me. I continue doing it because it's a self-convincing strategy in my brain that says, yeah, carry on doing it. Yes, you want to do it this way. That's it. That's it. This is the way you do it. And then you get your payoff. You live with the payoff. The consequences of your payoff, depending on whether it's good or not good or chaotic, will be the consequence that you'll have to live with as it arrives.
Great. That makes it very clear. So then we also have one that says, may you please explain again the chemicals that drive positivity and help you avoid storing stress hormones?
So if you Google positive neurochemicals, so you Google positive neurochemicals, you'll find serotonin, find ephedrine, you will find melatonin, and dopamine, and these are chemicals. So dopamine is the achievement chemical. So the moment someone likes anything on your phone, they go, oh, that was a nice photograph, and you like it. There's an immediate injection of dopamine, a feeling of, oh, feels so great. And dopamine gets you addicted to your cell phone. And we are addicted to our phones because we actually believe that someone says, I think it's wonderful, I like it. We go, ooh, it's wonderful. I've got 3,000 people that like what I said, and it goes, oh, I feel so great. And you're filled with dopamine. And so if you Google positive neurochemicals, dopamine, serotonin, melatonin is for sleep. So you can read all about it in Google. There's a huge amount of information. You can go to Pinterest and also look at positive chemicals, positive brain chemicals, and you can read up about it. But you can create your own chemistry. When you're in love with someone, there's a huge amount of dopamine. There's a huge amount of endorphin. And so people that are in love for the first year, 2 years of their relationship, they're actually drugged. And then after the 3rd year, they wake up in this thing called marriage going, oh, you know, who's this next to me in the bed? And then like it's all worn off, and now I'm no longer drugged. Now I'm in reality, and I'm seeing the person next to me snores, their feet smell, and their breath smells. Yeah, welcome to reality.
Thank you so much. I think I'm going to give you one last question before our time runs out. Lavelle asked, can unmanaged stress lead to procrastination?
Just repeat that. Can I manage stress?
Can unmanaged stress lead to procrastination?
Unmanaged stress, first of all, will lead to the impact of the body. So we go back to the lecture of where we are in our body. And so the continuation of stress due within the 11 systems of the body and within the brain, etc. So unmanaged stress means that it's always in me, everywhere, most places, and will preside somewhere in terms of its nucleus, of its epicenter, the epicenter of the earthquake. The end result of what it does to my body, so my body will become lethargic, I will feel depleted, I feel semi-depressed, I will have lack of energy, lack of movement, lack of momentum, there will be no stress. So stress impacts all of that. Eventually it ties me up in knots. Eventually it creates what stress actually does. The first thing that it does in our body is it creates inflammation. And the first area of inflammation is between the brain and the gut. A very important connection to remember. You've got about 10 to the power of 38 zeros of cells and microbes in your gut. And when your gut is not aligned to your brain cell structure, which is also around about 10 to the power of 28, there's a few more in the gut than there is in the brain, then you have inflammation. And inflammation is when the body then begins to fight against itself. Then you've got your white cells and red cells coming in for attack on how to work. And that energy then is expended within the body and you begin to feel depleted. But procrastination will be a result. So when you look at that one circle, it'll become a result of one of the results of stress. So yes, the answer is yes, and there's more.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bill. Guys, our session has reached the end for today. I think we've got amazing content, things that we can practically start using, not just watching this webinar and then deciding, yeah, I'll do it later, the procrastination phase. We will make sure that we use this to better ourselves and make sure that we holistically are much healthier. So if you guys have any questions, there's a lot of questions on all three the previous sessions. We will send that through to the team, and we will then hear back on Thursday regarding the questions everyone had. So please remember to sign in again on Thursday to have all of your questions answered. Thank you very much, Dr. Bill, for your session today. It was amazing.
Thank you.
Marnie, Neo, thank you for being online. Thank you very much, guys. You can leave the session by clicking the right bottom hand side of your screen. We'll send through all of you have had any other questions, please just put into the Q&A. We are sure to send through to the team. Thank you once again for joining us and make time. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon, and we'll see you on our next webinar.